Welcome, sports nerds. Welcome to the Raw Prospect Podcast. My name is Emmy Nixon. Today is Wednesday, May 17th. And joining me, the Wembenyama winner, the Houstonian Yankee, the Stat King himself, Mr. Michael Ween. What's up?
Oh, what a great day it is. I can't tell you how refreshing it is to know that the San Antonio Spurs will be drafting, hopefully, the next great generational big. They got David Robinson in 87. They got Duncan. And see, I was combining the two, Duncan and Robinson. They got Tim Duncan in 97, and now they're going to get Victor Wembanyama. I wasn't getting my hopes up yesterday. I was just hoping for a top 4 pick, and I think I voiced that on our NBA episode, our conference finals preview, which has been getting rave reviews so far, and you should go check that out. I think I voiced that I'd be pleased with a top 4 pick, but to get the number 1 pick, man, and see like the whole city of San Antonio react like that after, not gonna lie, a couple years of not good basketball in the city of San Antonio. Yeah, it's very exciting. But we're here to talk baseball today. And so what we're going to be doing today on episode 167 is we're going to be doing a quarter mark of the MLB season. Each team has played around 40 to 43 games. A quarter mark MLB confidence meter. So Emmy and I have gone ahead and selected 8 teams, 4 from the American League and 4 from the National League that are intriguing to talk about at this point in time for a variety of reasons. And we're going to dive into each team, starting with the Tampa Bay Rays, who have from start to finish pretty much been the best team in baseball by a lot at 32-11, leading the AL East, which is by far the best division top to bottom in baseball. Emmy, your confidence meter, where is it at for the Tampa Bay Rays?
Well, it's hard to say anything other than 10 at the moment. Having a over 70% win percentage, having the return of Wander Franco, and having this team just mesh as well as it has, and their confidence just within their clubhouse is clear enough just from the outside looking in. But um, I think in terms of what they could do at the trade deadline, or what they feel they would need to do at the trade deadline, I don't think it would be much. I think this team is pretty much ready to go. And really, the only thing they need to hope for is good health.
Yeah, the Rays 32-11, first place in the AL East. That gives you confidence in and of itself. They did lose a series to Baltimore last week, and they just split a series with the Yankees at Yankee Stadium. But they have beaten the Yankees in a series already. They got a 4 or 5 game lead in the AL East at this point in the season, and everything's been clicking. First of all, in my opinion, you have a top 3 manager in all of baseball who knows what he's doing, and he's been great in big situations before, and he's great at managing pitching staff, the bullpen, and just keeping things alive within that clubhouse, which is why I think this team plays so well, is because they just vibe with each other. Kevin Cash is awesome. There's no worry when it comes postseason time that it's going to be the manager that may screw things up with this Tampa Bay Rays team. Kevin Cash is fantastic. The scary thing with the Rays, though, that gives me a high level of confidence that this can continue moving forward, is that they still have about twice as many starters on the injured list than they do healthy. And when you look at the injured list, they just placed Drew Rasmussen, their second or third starter, on the he's been not the ace so far, but he's been like their second guy in that rotation. so far this season. They placed him on the 60-day IL with a flexor tendon strain in his elbow. It's probably precautionary, but the pitching depth within this team. I mean, you have Jeffrey Springs on the IL. You have Shane Baz on the IL. You have your ace Tyler Glasnow still on the IL. And you look at what Shane McClanahan's done, the ace of this team. He's in the early Cy Young candidate race, along with some other guys like Garrett Cole and so forth, with a 2.34 ERA. The pitching staff is unbelievable, but the lineup is the biggest difference this season. They have 7 hitters with the OPS of 875 or higher. Yandy Diaz, their leadoff hitter, has a 1.022 OPS. That's elite. And Randy Arozarena has a 967 OPS. Those two rank second and third in the American League among qualified hitters, which is amazing. They lead the league in every triple slash category that there is. Batting average, slugging, OPS as a team. They're fourth in stealing bases. They're first in home runs, which you really don't think about when you think about this Rays team. They're solid defensively. They are just a well-run, well-oiled machine, and I don't foresee them slowing down anytime soon. And I'm not sure that they'll need to add anybody at the trade deadline. I know that injuries occur, and they'll probably want to go out and make some ancillary moves to supplement this roster, which I think they will. But if they just went forward with this team, when they get some of the guys that they're going to get back healthy, I mean, they could win a World Series with the team as it is constructed right now, in my opinion. So my confidence meter is like a 9 or a 10 with Tampa Bay.
Yeah, exactly. We're on the same page there. Our next team,
It's going to be the Texas Rangers at 26 and 16. Do you want me to start off, or do you want to go ahead?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and start us off.
Okay, 26 and 16. Look, Jacob deGrom is temporarily down on the IL with some temporary stuff. They're going to be pretty precautionary about those type of things this early in the season. They're still winning despite not having him, which is good. And when you look at what this pitching staff has done, another offseason addition has arguably been just as good as Jacob deGrom. Nathan Eovaldi, who pitched his past couple years with the Boston Red Sox and was a pretty good starter, arguably their ace at times with Boston, has been a hell of an addition. He owns the MLB's longest scoreless inning streak, and he's been their best pitcher. He's been an ace. That's a huge pickup for Texas. And then Marcus Semien, when they signed him the offseason before last year, he didn't really pan out like they wanted him to last year. He's been great so far this season. They haven't had Corey Seager, and they've had a lot of the younger players stepped up, like Adolis Garcia and some other guys within there. I really like this Texas team. I don't know if they'll be able to maintain the lead on the Astros within that division, but I certainly think that they're an above 500 ball club, and they'll be in the hunt for a wild card spot if they keep this up at a fairly comparable level to what they are doing right now.
Right. I agree. I think eventually the Astros will get hot. They're going to get Altuve back here pretty soon. And obviously, with their track record, there's enough reason to believe they're going to catch up at some point. Really, with the Rangers, it's just all about maintaining this level of play from their hitters. Marcus Semien, I think, has a case for early season MVP, or MVP outside of Tampa Bay, I'd say. But man, I mean, this team, in coming into the season, a lot of people were, kind of hesitant to buy into what they were doing here. They kind of built this team in a very unique way, going out and making splashes in free agency. before having, the clarity of, the confidence in some of the young prospects. They kind of did all the free agent splashes beforehand. And now that the young guys are coming around, it's really just all coming together here. And they still don't have, obviously, their ace that they signed in the offseason, as you mentioned. So
Go ahead.
it's going to be on the up and up for the Rangers. I don't see them, winning a World Series this year, but I do think a realistic expectation is being in the wild card, getting that experience, and possibly winning a wild card matchup.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if Eovaldi continues to pitch the way he's pitching, if DeGrom comes back and looks like Jacob DeGrom or anything close to that, probably 80% of Jacob DeGrom is still an ace in today's baseball.
Right.
If you have that 1-2 punch going into a 3-game wild card series, you have as good of a chance as anybody, because we know that in the playoffs, what really wins is timely hitting, right? Getting those 2-out hits, those 2-out big base hits to not strand runners on second and third base, getting the timely sac fly to bring a runner home from third with less than 2 outs. It's those type of things. The big single shoot it through the gap without the shift now is becoming a bigger thing within baseball. Stealing bases, which Simeon's totally capable of, Corey Seager's totally capable of. A couple of those guys in that lineup, including Adolis Garcia, is capable of. They checked that box, or they've checked it so far. It's still mid-May. We haven't even gotten to Memorial Day yet, which is typically where I really start to check the standings. Like the end of May going into June is when a lot of baseball fans start to really pay attention to the standings. But give them credit. They've done what they needed to do this far. And I think they may be one of these teams that has benefited overall the most from the rule changes. I think there's a lot of production that is coming from that is a product of the result of the rule changes, which we can talk about the rule changes another time, but they have been overall pretty successful so far as well, and encouraging more action, especially on the bases. There's more scoring. The overall MLB average, batting average, is way up this year. So, yeah, I think the Rangers are in a good spot. With the wild card whole expectation thing, it's going to be mumble jumble in the AL. I mean, you look at hell, the whole AL East as a whole could be a playoff bracket in itself. I mean, but I do think, the Mariners they're sitting around 500. They're probably going to heat up here pretty soon. You have the Astros, you have the Twins, who we're not going to talk about today, but they've been pretty good. I think realistically for the Rangers, you're probably looking at anywhere between 84 to 88 wins and maybe sneaking into a wild card spot. But hey, that's a really, really good season after what you have been through the past half decade or so. So with that, we'll move on.
Right. I'll just to say one thing. I just want to go on the record here and say this. We saw what the Phillies did with their dynamic duo of starting pitchers last year with Aaron Nola and
Zach Wheeler.
Zach Wheeler. Right. You saw what they did last year, and that's the biggest thing. You just got to get in. Once you get in, anything can happen.
Right. Yeah, and again, with that pitching, even if Eovaldi comes back to earth a little bit, which over the course of 30, 35 starts in a regular season, if he doesn't get hurt, is probably bound to happen. He's not going to continue probably this scoreless inning streak for much longer. I mean, there are just too many good lineups within this league, and that's really hard to do. But that's still a really formidable 1-2 punch that can match up with what the Astros have, or maybe even match up with what the Yankees might have when they get, Carlos Rodon back from injury, or what the Blue Jays have with Alek Manoah, even though he hasn't been Alek Manoah so far, and Kevin Gausman, and so forth and so forth. So with that, we'll move on to another team in the AL East that has been crushing so far. the Baltimore Orioles. I'll let you start off and give your thoughts on what you think of the Orioles and how confident you are that they can keep this up within the toughest division in baseball.
Well, with the Orioles, it's simple. They have probably one of the three best outfields in baseball. And it really comes down to one name in particular, that one that I wasn't familiar with coming into the season, but I sure am right now. Adley Rutschman.
Yes.
Um, he's been incredible, batting 287, um, 412, 455 splits with 6 homers, and he has more walks than strikeouts. That's extremely difficult to do. That's getting quality at bats every single time he's at the plate. That's extremely impressive. And then the Orioles, just in general, they just have a vibe of a young team on the rise. Um, a lot of ups and downs can happen throughout a season, obviously, but if you're the Orioles, I think the confidence level for this year is going to be different than their confidence level overall as an organization. And their confidence level as an organization is what I really wanted to focus on, because that's what's important. I don't think ultimately they're expecting to go out and finish second in this division, but really the only goal here is to exceed expectations and have these young stars improve and take the next step and learn how to win games, learn how to close games, and ultimately they're doing that. So whether they make the playoffs or not, I think this Orioles organization is in a really good spot. So I ended up with 8 on the confidence meter for the Orioles.
Do you know how they do the league pass rankings for the NBA? Like, these are the teams that I'd most like to watch
Right.
on League Pass. Not necessarily the best teams all the time, but the teams that are the most fun to watch. Um, yeah, I think you could do something similar with baseball. And if you did it, the Orioles would definitely be top 5, in my opinion. They are just an absolutely entertaining, fun team to watch. A ton of young talent. Um, and they're kicking ass in the best division in baseball, no debate. Every single team has, I think, 23 wins or more in this division right now. And things are a little mumble jumbled. You have the Rays at the top, and then you have the Orioles, who are separated a little bit from the Yankees and the Jays. And then you have the Red Sox right there. They're in last place, but in any other division, they would be, probably second or third place. So, um, yeah, I mean, the Orioles, what stands out to me with them is number one, I think he's probably one of the best players in baseball that never gets talked about and needs to be talked about. Cedric Mullins, their center fielder. He's been awesome. He's probably going to be an all-star this season as long as he doesn't get hurt. He's amazing. He can do a little bit of everything. Great defense in center field. Um, hits the ball to all parts of the field, has some power. And he is like the spark plug. He's the heart and soul of this team. And then you add in Adley Rutschman, who was the number 1 overall prospect in baseball and had been waiting to be called up until late last year, struggled a little bit last year, but this season has been kicking ass with, as you mentioned, a 287 batting average, a 412 slugging percentage, uh, you know, a 455 on base. I mean, that is unbelievable for a catcher. With what catchers give you in today's baseball, there are some really good ones, don't get me wrong, but catchers aren't typically known for elite hitting tools in the major leagues. It's just not what they are. Catchers have their own sort of role, and it's a very important role. I'd argue one of the more important roles in baseball. They got to make sure they're, in sync with the pitcher. They got to know all the pitchers. They got to know every guy from the bullpen and their combination of pitches and how to pitch this guy who's at the plate, how to pitch this guy who's at the plate. They got to sort of feel the game and sequence the pitches based on what's been happening. Catchers have a very hard job, and that's why they're not typically, built to hit, because they're more focused on pitch framing, making sure they're doing their job at the plate, not allowing pass balls, stuff of that nature. But Adley Rushman is one of those rare guys who's has elite hitting tools, and he gives them so much lineup versatility because he's a switch hitter, which makes it all the more that impressive that he can bat right-handed and bat left-handed. So if you're facing a righty, you can put him on the right side. If you're facing a lefty, you can put him on the left side, and you can mix and match with those sort of matchups. And then more walks and strikeouts for a catcher is like unheard of. And the last thing I want to say is this Orioles team, although their starting rotation has been fine, this bullpen is one of the best in the majors. So they rank second in bullpen ERA, which sometimes can be a misleading stat, right? Because you could have one bad inning from one guy in the bullpen, and it can elevate that ERA, a bunch when it doesn't necessarily always tell the full story. But Yinyer Cano has been one of the best relievers in baseball, 22 Ks in 19 and 2/3 innings with a 0 ERA. That's the best you can do. And then Felix Bautista, their closer, has a 1.42 ERA. He's got 10 saves and 36 strikeouts in 19 innings. That's almost 2 strikeouts per inning for a 1 inning reliever. That's insane. So I don't know if they keep that up. I think this division is so good that it's going to be hard. But I do think the Orioles are in the range where they could have a winning record. And if they make a move or two, which I think they will need to, still think they could add a little more pop to the lineup, probably in the middle of the lineup. And then they could probably get another starting pitcher, as you can never have enough starting pitching, especially in the American League where you have a bunch of these teams who already have their 1-2 punch established. They could add a couple guys at the deadline to really make a push for the postseason. But at this point, I think this Orioles team, I'm at about a 7 confidence meter that they can finish above 500 and once again exceed expectations. So they're a really
Right.
fun team to watch.
Right. Exactly.
All right.
Okay, our next team is going to be the Seattle Mariners. I'll start off with this one. The Mariners are currently 21 and 20. Just got a win, 10-1 against the. I can't remember who they played, but they've won 10 of their last 14 games. They started up the season super slow. This team is flawed in some aspects, roster wise, but their top end talent. I mean, it's showed up big time, especially on this last stretch that they've had. The big thing for Seattle is going to be to just stay in the fight. They're in a division with 4 teams who have winning records. That's never an easy thing. It's one of the best divisions in baseball outside of the Athletics, and that's just the biggest thing. Just until from now until around the All-Star break, the trade deadline, they just got to stay in the hunt. Because at the trade deadline, I expect this team to make a lot of moves. They have a lot of prospects that can move. They can move around, and with the top end talent that they have, I think there's enough there to merit some win now moves at the deadline. So for the confidence meter for me, with how they've been playing lately, I had it at like a 6, 7, 6.5, somewhere in that range. But the feeling around this team, I'd say, is mostly positive because of the track record of the Angels and the team like the Rangers, who I think the Mariners and the Rangers are on a similar tier in terms of roster talent, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. My confidence meter in the Seattle Mariners is probably like a 7. And the reason is because you look at this rotation, it's one of the deepest rotations and deepest pitching staffs in baseball, period. Um, they went out at last year's trade deadline, sort of a surprise move, and acquire Luis Castillo, who's a Cy Young candidate in the American League so far. He's their ace. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball that never got talked about because he was stuck in Cincinnati for all those years. But now he's getting some notoriety finally and some respect because he's with Seattle. He's been awesome. And then George Kirby, Bryce Miller, who's a rookie, who's made 3 starts, has been awesome. Chris Flexen, who I think is on the injured list but might be coming back soon. I mean, the rotation is awesome. All the young talent within this rotation, plus Luis Castillo, who was that bona fide ace that they were missing, who was great in the playoffs last year in that series against the Toronto Blue Jays, where the Mariners swept. Yeah, the pitching staff gives me a lot of confidence that if they get into the playoffs, they will be set up very well because their offense lately has been coming around after struggling early on in the season. They get Julio Rodriguez back after he was out for a couple games. He's been very good. Not quite the Julio that we saw last year post All-Star break, but very good. I expect him to heat up and have one of those streaks sometime soon. They're sitting okay in a pretty good division. Not quite on the AL East level, but and of course the A's dragged that down a little bit, but it's a good division. I mean, the Astros are going to heat up soon. They're getting Altuve back. The Rangers, although they might not sustain the pace they're on now, are still going to be a really good team and in that race. And then the Angels, I mean, it's hard to really tell right now with the Angels, but they're above 500 and they're trying to be in the mix because they're going to do everything they can to be in the mix because they don't want to lose Shohei Ohtani at the trade deadline, right? They might have to trade him anyway just to get something for him, and that's going to be probably the biggest midseason storyline I think we've had in almost any sport in the past 5 years. It's one of the biggest. It ranks up there. But yeah, the Mariners are in a fine spot. Cal Raleigh has been good. Jared Kelenic has been good. And then their bullpen is almost unhittable at points in time. So I think I have about a 7 confidence meter right now with the Mariners. Look, they're hanging around 500, but this early in the season, the record really doesn't matter. I mean, you look at what some of these teams have done the past couple of years. Phillies were under 500 at the All-Star break last year and went on to make it to the World Series. Same thing with the Braves the year before that. So, yeah, I'm not saying that the Mariners are going to do the same thing, but you just have to be wary of how much stock you put into that 500 record that you see. So, with that, we'll move on to the NL. Do you have anything else you want to say?
No, I think we're all good on that.
Yeah.
Our next team is one that was talked about a lot before the start of the season with all the moves that they made. It's the New York Mets. I'll let you start off with this one because for me personally, I don't really know what to make of them at the moment.
Yeah, right now it's a disaster. And the reason is because it's not because they're 20 and 23 or whatever they are, 20 and 23, 20 and 24, and have a losing record at this point in the season. That's not really the ultimate reason that people in Queens and Mets fans all around the country are panicking right now. The reason is because especially with the balanced schedule now, where you're playing everybody over the course of the season rather than mostly playing American League teams or National League teams and then having some cross intra-league series throughout the season as it was in past years. You're playing everybody now. And you're getting these games against teams that you are, you're better than. I mean, you look at what they've done the past couple of weeks. They've, playing the Tigers and I don't know. They just, in today's world, in today's baseball, sometimes if you want to be a really good team and you want to be in the playoffs, the really good teams, they beat up on the inferior teams. And the Mets have not been doing that. They just recently lost a series to the Tigers. They've lost a couple other series. They lost a series to the Nationals, who haven't been actually as bad as we thought they were going to be, but still you can't really do that, especially with when they're in your division and you need these wins that are so important within your division and in this division that's really good as a whole. The reason people are panicking is because they haven't been beating the inferior competition. And it's for a bunch of reasons. The lineup really isn't producing outside of Brandon Nimmo, who's batting .320 and has an .863 OPS. He's been their best hitter. I mean, Pete Alonso has been good as well. He actually is tied for the league lead in home runs, 14 homers. But outside of that, Lindor hasn't really been what Francisco Lindor is supposed to be. And they need more production out of the bottom half of this lineup. And then the pitching staff, it seems like Max Scherzer has regressed quite a bit. Verlander is not looking the same. And so, although he just came back from the IL, and I think he'll be better than he has been, but it's just nothing's really clicking right now. And sometimes in baseball, that happens. So we'll see how the Mets can turn this thing around. I think they will eventually. They'll get to the above 500 mark and be in a race for a wild card spot. Most likely, they're not going to catch the Braves. It's just not going to happen, I don't think. But yeah, I'd probably say my confidence meter as of right now is probably like a 3 or a 4. I'm not feeling very confident in the Mets. Although I do have an intuition that they will turn things around eventually.
Yeah, I think if the Mets had prior postseason success, I would feel a bit better. But the problem is they don't. So to me, I start to question the organization a little bit. You know, year over year of them spending and spending and spending to cover up these same flaws. I feel like every single year, even when the Mets have played well, they've had these hitting issues. Um, so I'm not sure if it's a just mental or just I'm not inside the clubhouse, so I don't really know. But to me, seeing the same thing over and over and over again, seeing the same trend of struggling to hit for portions and portions of the season. Last year it was the final stretch of the season. This year it's been every single game so far this year. So like I said, I don't know what to make of it. My confidence meter is at like a 2 at the moment. I just I really struggle to see them turn this thing around just because the pressure is so high and it just looks like there there isn't guys stepping up. I could be wrong on that. Like I said, I'm kind of on the fence about it, but I'm not feeling too great about the Mets either. I don't think anyone is.
Right, and it doesn't help that they're playing the Rays right now.
Yeah.
That does not help at all. But still got 2 games against the Rays, and then your schedule once again eases up a little bit. I mean, the Guardians are a pesky squad. They're a good ball club. It's not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. But then you get the Rockies and the Cubs, who actually haven't been all that bad. But, those are teams that you should beat with the payroll that the Mets have. And then you get the Phillies, who have had their own struggles, but have heated up a little bit past couple of weeks. And then you get Toronto, the Braves, the Yankees. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's tough. I'm probably closer to a 3 than I am a 4. I'm probably somewhere in between. Um, I think they'll start to hit. But the worry I have most with the Mets is this was a team that was mainly constructed off its ability to pitch, and they have not been doing that. So
Right.
when you have Scherzer on a big deal, when you have Verlander on a big deal, and they're both in the latter stages of their careers, if they're not living up close to expectation, then that puts you in a really tough spot.
Right.
So we'll see what happens with the Mets. We'll check it back in probably a month or two and see where they're at. Let's go to
One thing I will say though is the saving grace might be that a lot of teams in the National League that have had the expectations, like some teams that we're going to talk about here next, are struggling. So that might be their saving grace. Some of the other, I guess, contenders in quotes are struggling as well. So maybe that can be where they can um, take advantage of that, I guess.
arguably the story of this season. At one point, they were as much as 10 games above 500, but a couple injuries and a little bit of an offensive slump have caused them to drop down to 22-20. That's the Pittsburgh Pirates. Baseball is back in the Berg. This is a young team that, even though there was some excitement around some of their young players coming into the year, um, O'Neal Cruz being one of them, who had a fantastic last season and came into this year, with high expectations as a player. He's a 5-tool guy. I think he plays second base. Really good on the defensive side. Really good hitting tools. Has all the power in the world. Was sort of the centerpiece of this Pittsburgh Pirates ball club coming into the season. He's currently down with a ankle injury right now. Should be back like probably in a month or so. So if you're the Pirates, you got to be pleased that you're still hanging around above 500, keeping your heads above water, just treading water until he comes back, because this offense was humming with him in the lineup. They have some other young players that I really like on the offensive side, but the biggest story for this Pirates team has been their pitching, which has been really good so far this year, much better than anybody expected it to be. And the main story has been Mitch Keller, who right now, if you look at the leaders in ERA in the National League, you're going to see Clayton Kershaw of the Dodgers at number 1, 2.36. You'll see Spencer Strider, the ace for the Atlanta Braves, the young guy, at 2.51 in second. And then you'll see Mitch Keller, who not a lot of fans knew outside of Pittsburgh up until right now. It was just a year ago, in fact, according to The Athletic, that he was demoted from the Pirates rotation, demoted to the minor leagues with a career 6.12 ERA, which is not good for a starter in a career. And now he's been fantastic, and he's leading this Pirates pitching staff, which has exceeded expectations. If they can just tread water until they get O'Neal Cruz back, I could see them as an 80-win team. I don't know if they'd get above 500. I just don't know. It seemed like their offense has slipped off a little bit. Maybe the first month was a little bit too good to be true type thing, as their offense it looked like the best in baseball at a point in time. They've kind of slipped off as of late. I believe they have 9 or less hits in 14 consecutive games. But even with that, they've still maintained a pretty good pace. They're still winning some ball games. I see the Pirates as probably like a 75-ish, between 75 and 80 win ball club if they're fully healthy and performing at a similar rate to what they have been so far. I'd say my confidence meter right now is probably about a 5 that they can achieve that, what I just talked about.
Right. Yeah. I kind of see the same thing. The biggest thing is the hitting. I think
Right.
um, I don't know if Pittsburgh has seen enough to be like, oh, we're gonna make moves at the deadline. So that's why I'm sitting here making this confidence meter like maybe like a 5 or 6. But then I thought about it and thought about their actual expectations coming into the season. They were looking at being one of the worst teams in baseball coming into the year. So really, if you think about it, even if they don't maintain this pace, even if they fall down to and end up only winning, 50, 55 wins, which I don't see happening as well. Even if that does happen, this first part of the year, you can use that and build off of that. So it's exciting for Pittsburgh, definitely. And they still have more prospects in the pipeline. It's an exciting time to be a Pirates fan for sure.
Yeah, all these young players and all Pittsburgh fans really want is like a competitive ball club, a club that you can at least go to the ballpark and watch a ball game and at least have somewhat confidence that they could potentially win the game. And I think that's what they have. I think they have a competitive ball club that can be respected and competitive within games against the league's best teams. Like they're not a rollover anymore. I think they might actually be in a stage similar to what the Orioles were last year. I think it's not exactly the same, but I think it's somewhat comparable. The Orioles sort of surprised a little bit last year, overachieved a little bit, and now look at them. They're arguably a contender in the American League at this point in time. I think they're probably still a year or two away from actually being considered contenders for the playoffs, and hitting is a big question, but there's certainly been a very good story, and I'm happy for the Pirates. All right, 40 minutes. Let's breeze through these next two teams. Give me your take on the San Diego Padres, who right now sit at 20-23.
Well, this lineup for the Padres is a all-star team and a bunch of alphas that are not performing quite up to par. It feels like a team that's waiting on the guy that's going to step up and lead the charge. And a lot of people thought, that would be Fernando Tatis Jr. That hasn't quite been the case yet. But I think for the Padres, you just got to be patient here. Tatis is coming off of, that long suspension. Of course, injuries before that. He missed all of last season. I think it's mostly rust right now. We know the talent that Tatis has. And at this point, that's what you got to lean on. Until then, you have Xander Bogaerts. You got incredible talent up and down that lineup. Um, so until then, you just, get some hits here and there, lean on your pitching a little bit. And then once you get into, kind of the mid-season when pitching starts to maybe deteriorate a little bit um, just from the load that the season puts on your pitchers, at that point, that's when you're going to need your guys to step up and start slugging. So you have a little bit of time. You're hanging around 500. I wouldn't panic quite yet. Right now, my confidence meter is at a 6. My confidence in them turning it around, I feel pretty confident that they're going to turn it around. I'd say my confidence in them turning it around is like a 7 or 8.
I agree with you. A couple of things I'll say. Juan Soto, relative to his expectations, struggled in April, but has been really, really good in May, which is a really good sign for the Padres. He's one of the best in baseball. 24 years old still, already has a World Series MVP in his bag, and could arguably win the National League MVP if the Padres heat up a little bit. Batting 370 with a 473 on base percentage and a 696 slugging percentage in the month of May so far. It's only been about 2 weeks of May, but that's really good over a 2-week span of baseball where you're getting 4 at bats pretty much every night. He's walking less and striking out less than he was in April. I think April was a little bit of a, it's often early in seasons, and this year has sort of been an exception. There's been more hitting early on this year because of the adjustment to the new rules for the pitchers, but in the elimination of the shift. But most often, pitching dominates early on, and hitting takes a little bit of time to catch up. And I think that's just what's going on with the Padres right now. I'm pretty confident that this thing will take off here pretty soon. I'd say for the Padres, you just want to be probably a couple games above 500 by the All-Star break, and then you can use that to sort of refresh. Pitching has been pretty good. Yu Darvish, the list goes on and on. And you have the top of your lineup is as good as anybody. Tatis is going to start hitting soon. Bogarts will turn it around. He's been one of the best hitters overall in the American League the past half decade, but has struggled recently with a 472 OPS, which is really bad in the month of May. And Soto is one of the best. So I think find some consistency within the bottom half of your lineup, which is the bigger issue. Continue to pitch, and once those guys at the top of the lineup take off a little bit, which one of them is starting to in Juan Soto, you'll be fine. I'd say that right now I'm at a 6.5, but I think this team will eventually find itself at least in a wild card spot. Let's wrap it up with the St. Louis Cardinals, who had a terrible start to the season, but right now sit at 17 and 26. Do you want to start us off, or do you want me to go?
I'll start off with this one. The biggest thing for the Cardinals is um confusion. Um, when I checked in on the standings, I think it was about a month ago, and looked and saw the Cardinals in last place in that division, I was just like, how in the world? And it's starting to turn around a little bit. They're 7-3 in their last 10, but they've dug themselves quite the hole. There's definitely reason to be hopeful as a Cardinals fan, and there's definitely reason to um, panic as well. I'd say I would lean more towards the hopeful side, just with the talent on this team, what they showed last season, and everything that has gone on this year. I think is addressable, um, one way or another, whether it be in the trade deadline or whether it just be from guys playing better, which they're already doing. So they still have a long way to go to get back to 500. There's no question about it. But for the Cardinals, it's really just about staying the course at this point. Their division is not the most formidable in the MLB, so that's one thing that is on their side, and they just gotta find wins.
Yeah, I mean, the key for the Cardinals right now is just chip away. You're not in an overly intimidating division. You can still make this work and possibly get up to the top of that division. I know the Brewers are up there. I know the Pirates are up there, but we talked about the Pirates. They might not sustain this for as long as we think they will, although we hope that they do because it's good for baseball that all these small market teams can be competitive. Um, Look, for the Cardinals, there were two things that were going on. Actually, yeah, two main things that were going on throughout the month of April and early May that put them in the position that they were in just like over a week ago when they only had like 10 or 12 wins. And they were like 10 and 25 or something along those lines. Number one, their stars weren't hitting at all. Uh, Arenado, who's like the heart and soul of this team, Nolan Arenado, just had a terrible start to the season for his standards. And then the National League MVP of last year, Paul Goldschmidt, was also really struggling for whatever reason. And this team just was not hitting. And it's hard to win baseball games if you can't really hit and your best players aren't hitting. Now those guys are starting to heat up. You know, Paul Goldschmidt has a 928 OPS in the month of May. And Arenado, who's a fantastic third baseman and gives you fantastic defense over there, maybe the best third baseman of this generation, to be honest with you. Uh, he's heating up as well. Those guys are starting to hit, which is good. And you're coming off a week last week where you went 5-1. You took 2 out of 3 from the Cubs, who have been a formidable club so far with Cody Bellinger and some of the other players they have at Wrigley. And then you swept the Red Sox, who are in one of the best divisions in baseball and are above 500 in Fenway. You swept them in Fenway. And so that's good. You just got to start chipping away. And then the other thing that was going on with the Cardinals for whatever reason was when we think of the Cardinals, we think of airtight defense. They do the little things well. They're going to do the little things well. They're going to steal bases. They're going to run the bases well. They're not going to make self-induced mistakes. And they're going to play airtight defense. They're not going to make a lot of errors. But early on in the season, for whatever reason, they were 29th in defensive efficiency. They were close to last place in defensive efficiency in terms of getting outs when they need to and not giving the other teams extra outs by making errors. There is a metric for that, and they were close to last in that metric. They've been better as of late, so you just got to get back to your identity. Do the little things well, play good defense, and let your stars lead the way. Because this lineup, they do have the capability to be successful in the postseason. They have some pop with Goldschmidt and Arenado, and they have the timely hitting and the contact hitting that you need come the playoffs. And their pitching staff hasn't really been all that healthy so far this year. So, yes, they're still a long ways from 500, but in this division, which I don't view as a very tough division, I'd say my confidence meter for the Cardinals to get back in the wild card race is probably at about a 5 right now, based on 1 week. But I still got to see a little more. Obviously, 1 week isn't going to do it all the way. But yeah, I think they're a veteran team. They have a lot of experience. They'll get it together. But I still got to see a little more. So that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of the Raw Prospect Podcast, MLB Quarter Mark Confidence Meter. Please leave a like and subscribe. Go check out our other episodes and tell us, who's your favorite team? How have they been doing so far this season? And what's your confidence meter that they can keep going? And if you disagree with us, we'd love to hear from you in the comments on any of these teams. And whether or not you like this segment or not, because if you did, we'll definitely bring it back, maybe at the halfway mark or something like that. So, yeah, any parting shots?
No, one thing I'll say is, well, I guess the answer would be yes. So I am going to say something, but man, the parity in baseball has been really, really good this season. I think we were expecting that coming in, but maybe not to this extent. I think that I can only really think of 2 absolutely awful teams in
Yeah,
baseball right now, the Royals and the A's. Outside of that, I think everybody is over 17 wins.
yeah,
We're within 8-9 games of 500, which is not horrible. So I think there's a lot of positives in that sense, seeing not as many teams bottoming out and tanking.
right. It's exciting for baseball when the small markets can at least be competitive. I mean, you see what the Tampa Bay Rays are doing and what the Rangers are doing. Although they're in a bigger market than, I wouldn't call it small, but it hasn't historically been a market that goes out, at least in recent past, and pays for talent. But now they're starting to do that. So are the Orioles. So are the Pirates. The Cardinals, although they've had a bad start to the season, they're starting to heat up a little bit. We see some other teams,
The
including
Diamondbacks.
the Diamondbacks, who will have to get to eventually and talking about them. But yeah, I like this way of covering the season. We'll have some different fun segments throughout the season. Of course, the All-Star break will be coming up here before you know it in mid-July. So we'll start to talk about that more next month. We'll talk about the Cy Young race. We'll talk about the MVP race. We might even do some other fun segments like power ranking, stuff like that. We'll keep you guys updated on all the teams throughout baseball. And I think we could even do probably our own episode on just the AL East if we really wanted to.
Yeah.
That could be a good one. So, with that being said, keep your eye out for another episode. We fixed some technical issues within our system. So episodes will be up on our audio feed and YouTube feed a lot faster than they had been going up. We already have our PGA Championship episode and our conference finals preview episode that we recorded on Monday up. So go check those out, whether you like to listen to it on audio or on YouTube. And we'll be back soon for another episode where we're going to react to the game ones of the conference finals and talk about the lottery, which is really exciting. So with all that being said, just like the chances of the AL East not being the best division in baseball, we are gone. Peace out.
Peace out.